Hey everybody, this is Gregory from DApp University. So welcome back to this mini-series where I'm showing you how to build a decentralized file upload DApp, where I'm allowing you to upload images and store those images on IPFS, and then storing a reference to those images on the Ethereum blockchain. So this tutorial is designed to show you how you can support file uploads for a decentralized application that's built on the blockchain, built on Ethereum, with IPFS. And this is a feature that a lot of decentralized applications are trying to implement, and I'm going to show you how to get started doing that. So be sure to check out the previous video, where I showed you how to get started, setting up your project to support IPFS. And also be sure to subscribe to the channel to see the next video in this mini-series when it comes out. All right, so let's get back to our project here. So we left off here where, we had set up a smart contract to store the IPFS value of the image that we want to upload. And we also, kind of just created this truffle project to support IPFS. And, we imported the IPFS library into our project. And we connected to an IPFS node with Infura. And right here, we just have, boilerplate website that came with our truffle box that, we used to build a React.js app quickly. And yeah, we'll kind of get started from here. So what we'll do is, clear out, some of this UI and add, the stuff that we actually want to see and start wiring up the behavior of our DApp here. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and head to our app.js file, and let's see, what's the first thing we want to do? Well, let's go ahead and create some markup that will reflect what we actually want to see. And in order to kind of prevent some of these warnings, I'm going to just comment out this body of code. I don't want to see this MetaMask confirmation pop up every time I refresh the page, so I'm going to comment this out, but we will change this back momentarily. So what I want to do is go down to our markup and change some things here. I want to customize this, and we'll call this IPFS file upload DApp. Well, you can spell this a variety of ways. A lot of disagreement on how you say the word DApp or DApp, or even spell DApp or DApp. You can spell it like this, or you can spell it all lowercase, or you can spell it, with a special character D. I'm just going to do it like this for now. So I'll do this. I'll say, your image. And we'll say this image is stored on IPFS and the Ethereum blockchain. And I'm going to clear this out, and I'll create an empty image tag here. And if you've not done much React.js programming before, you can use emit to do tap to completion. And I'm going to leave this empty here. Also, like I said, I'll kind of maybe give you an overview if you're not familiar with React. What this is this is a class that extends a React component, and React uses components to kind of manage every little part of their code. It's kind of how they encapsulate code and render it. So React essentially gives you a way to couple your logic of your components with the markup. So inside this render function is where we're writing all the markup. In other JavaScript frameworks, you might be familiar with templates and keeping templates as separate files. Well, React does things a little differently. So a lot of people are familiar with React, but just in case you're not, I wanted to show you, kind of give you an overview of how that works. Don't get too confused by all these, functions that are inside of here. You won't need to understand everything that's going on here in order to follow this tutorial. But just know for now that I'm down here and I'm just, updating the template that we're going to see on the page. So I'm creating an empty image tag here, and I'll do H2. Oops, sorry. And I'll say, upload image. And I'm going to go ahead and create a form. And I'll do that. And I'll put some content inside here. I'll do an input. This will be type file. All right, and we'll do on change. We'll actually create a function here in a second. And I'll also create another input. That will be the submit button. All right, I'll save that. And I'll also create an on submit handler for the form as well. Okay, so let's just clear all this out and save and go back to our page here. See what happens. Oh, all right. It doesn't like the fact. Yeah, I've got to put something inside here. I'll just take these out for now. Let's refresh our page. Okay. So yeah, this is what we want to see. This is the updated UI for the project that we're going to be building. Yeah, so essentially what we'll do is we'll see the image, and we'll say, the image is stored here, and whenever the image is actually rendered out from IPFS, we'll display it here. And this is going to be our form where we can choose the file and click submit. So let's go ahead and wire this thing up. So yeah, like I said, the first kind of things that we're doing over here, I'm going to undo these and actually wire up these on submit handlers and the change handler. So I'll say this to on submit, and then we'll say this capture file. So we'll define these functions like this. We'll actually define a capture file here. All right, and we'll just do console log capture file. And I'll also do on submit console.log. All right, so I'm going to fill these out momentarily. So inside of these functions, we want to reference this, the keyword in JavaScript. So in order to do that, we'll need to, bind these functions inside the constructor. So this is something that's pretty specific to React. So if you're not super familiar with this, don't worry. Just know that if I want to reference this inside those functions, I have to do this. All right, and I'll say, this.capture file equals this.capture file.bind, and we'll pass in this. All right. And we'll have to do the same thing for on submit. All right, I'm going to save those. So essentially what I'm doing there is we're going to fill these out momentarily. But if I want to, reference this inside these functions, that's what I have to do. So with React, we have props and state, and we're going to be updating state. So if you want to do like this.setState inside of any one of these functions, I have to bind them like this. And there's a couple different ways to do this. You know, the opinions are kind of changing on React and best practices and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, we're just using simple component state here. I don't want to get too off into the weeds about, you know, React best practices and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but this will get us started, and this will be good enough for this tutorial. So I'll save this and go back to our page. And it's got some compilation warnings here. No big deal. I don't think there's any errors. Yeah, IPFS is defined but never used. This, no big deal. We'll fill that out in a minute. All right, so we do have an error. Cannot read property bind of undefined. All right, so let's see kind of what happened here. What did we miss? All right, so it just looks like that we had a typo. Let's say on submit. All right, let's save that and go back to our browser. Okay, so looks like those were addressed. So let's just try choosing a file and trying to submit the form to see what happens, just to make sure those functions are wired up. So let's choose a file we want to upload, and I've got you know, some test files here. So I'll upload this. All right, so capture file was called whenever the file field changed, which is what we wanted. You know, we defined this on submit handler. On change handler. So, you know, anytime this input file changes, we want to capture the file, and that was console logged here. And we want to submit the form and see some sort of console log for on submit. And actually, in order to see that, let's do this, and it's passing the event prevent default. What I'm doing there is, you know, in HTML, the default behavior of a form is to basically change to a new page. And what I don't want to change to a new page. I want it to stay on the same page. So I'm going to prevent the default behavior so that this, you know, button click doesn't submit a page refresh. I actually want to see this console logging statement. So I'll save that, go back to the page, refresh, choose file, logo, open, capture file, and submit. All right, now on submit was called. So both of those are wired up. So let's fill them in. All right, so let's see here. The first thing we want to do is, you know, capture this file so that it can actually be submitted to IPFS. Now, there's a couple of steps that we need to do in order to make that happen. So we can't just like take this file and just like put it on IPFS directly. We actually have to do a couple things with it first. So we actually have to get this file, you know, from this field, from the window in JavaScript, and we're going to use, you know, the native file reader to do that. And then we're actually going to have to take like, you know, binary and like put it in a format that can be understood and, you know, set on IPFS. So we'll do that. We'll do that by basically like converting this into a buffer. And, you know, the buffer is what's going to allow us to, you know, post this file to IPFS in a way that it can understand. So yeah, and buffer is something that comes, you know, with Node. I can, you know, show you some resources to learn about that. Let's see here. A couple things that I just mentioned, right? Here's some more resources you can get on, you know, W3 Schools and read about, you know, Node.js buffer module. Yeah, so basically, like, you know, it allows us to create a stream of binary data, and that's like what we're going to use when we post the file to IPFS. And, you know, I'll let you read more about this if you want to. Here's a good resource. And also, you know, this file reader is something, This file reader is, you know, an object that's going to allow you to read the contents of file, right? Or raw data buffers, right? Like I was just saying, stored on the user's computer using a file or blob objects. So yeah, these are like the two things we're going to use in order to, you know, work with this file upload and then convert it into something that the IPFS API can understand. So I'll show you how to wire those up. I'll kill those for now. I'll let you just look at those more later. So all the, you know, file conversion is going to happen with this capture file function here, which is getting called, you know, whenever this input changes. So I'll say let's pass in the event. We want to prevent the default behavior here. And we want to, we want to set the file like this. We'll say const file. So, if you're new to ES6, this is how you can declare variables. You can use let or const. Const is for variables that don't change their value, and there's a lot of different subtleties about the difference between the two, but that's a basic distinction. We don't want file to change here. We'll say event. We'll say target files 0, and this is going to give us access to the file. We're going to read it from the event target, the event that's passed in. We'll get the target, which is that input, and we will get the files from that and just get the first one. This is, a zero-based index based on the array that's in here. And we'll say const reader. This is going to be the reader that I just showed you. This is window dot file reader. All right. And I'm going to say reader dot read as array buffer. All right, and I'm going to pass in the file. So don't get too hung up if you don't understand all this. Like I said, you can refer back to that documentation, but essentially what we're doing is we're just getting the file that's uploaded. We are taking the file reader that I just showed you, and we're passing that file in here and converting it to an array that this buffer is going to understand. And then we're going to pass this into the buffer that will allow us to have a file that can be sent to IPFS. So this reader has a callback called onLoadEnd, and we can assign this a function like this. This is an arrow function in ES6, and what we'll do is take the result, reader, once this is loaded, we have access to reader result. This is going to be, the result of this, this right here. This is going to give us this, array of data that we can pass into the buffer. And we'll do that like this, buffer. All right, this is the buffer from Node that I talked about a minute ago. And this is going to say buffer, and then pass in the reader.result. This is going to give us, a format that's going to allow us to post to IPFS. And I'm going to set this to the state of this component like this. This set state and pass in buffer. All right. Okay, so let's also log this just to see that it's working. Say this state buffer. I want to read it actually from the state to ensure that all this actually worked. And I'm going to take out capture file. All right. So quick recap. We're going to, basically all this is just converting the file that we uploaded into a format that IPFS can understand, and we're setting it to the state. So essentially what's going to happen is we're going to select this file, we're going to assign it to this component in a way that IPFS can understand, and we're going to have a way to read that whenever we want to submit the form. And whenever we submit the form, we're actually going to read this value and post it to IPFS. So I'll save it, go back to our browser, just refresh. I'm pretty sure you've got auto refresh enabled with the shuffle box, but I'm just going to refresh to be sure. So let's take a file, take this logo and open. All right. Okay, we can see that was successful. I'm logging the buffer here. You can see this is an unsigned integer array, and these are all the values that were created. So that was successful. Oops. All right. So now let's go on to wire up this form to submit. Well, actually, let's go ahead and create a default value for buffer here. Let's say buffer, say null. All right. So let's wire up this onSubmit handler and post this file to IPFS. So what I'll do is say IPFS, which is what we have access to up here. All right, we pulled IPFS in from this IPFS.js file that we configured in the previous video. And I'm going to say IPFS dot files dot add. All right. This is, you can read more about this in the IPFS API JavaScript API documentation. But yeah, basically we're just going to read the file from IPFS like this. And we'll say IPFS, files add, and this .state.buffer. All right. And this is going to accept a callback function, an error and a result. And we'll pass in, an ES6 error function like this. And we'll do a little error checking. We'll say if there's an error, then we want to, I'm actually going to be more verbose. If there's an error, we want to console log. Actually, we want to console error, the error, and then return. And if not, we will say we're going to post it to IPFS. So we'll say, well, sorry, we already posted this IPFS. This is what is posting to IPFS. So we'll just set the state for now. We'll say this set state. And let's actually set the IPFS hash. IPFS hash equals IPFS hash. Okay. And we'll go ahead and add a default value for this here. I'm going to say IPFS hash. We'll do an empty string. All right. I think that's good. Let's see, post this to IPFS, and let's run here, handle an error. And if not, we'll just we'll do return. This.set state IPFS hash, IPFS hash. All right, let's just see. Okay, IPFS hash is not defined. Oh, sorry. Duh. So what I'll do is say result. That's this right here. Result. I believe this is how you do it. Result 0 dot hash. Okay. So this is going to be the first result that comes back, and we're actually going to take the IPFS hash and assign it here. Okay. All right. So that worked. So let's choose a file. We'll choose this logo. We'll open and submit. And okay, we got no errors. So let's actually console log this. Console log. We'll just say, let's actually do this. Let's ensure that, let's not return. Let's read this from state. IPFS hash. And we'll say this.state IPFS hash. Choose the file, logo, open, submit. All right, so we successfully got a hash. Let me just make sure you can see that on the tutorial. We got a IPFS hash back. So our file submission is working properly with the IPFS hash, and this is sort of your smoke test to ensure that everything is wired up and working properly. Okay. So now that we've got that stored properly with IPFS, let's go back to our client-side application, and let's actually display the image here. So what I'll do is build a predictable URL with inside this source tag, and we're basically going to use string interpolation here to assign a value like this. So TPS, this is the IPFS URL and IPFS, and basically you can pass in any IPFS hash here, and it will return the file that you're looking for. So we'll say this.state.ipfs hash. Okay. So if you're not familiar with React and ES6 and kind of the new way of doing JavaScript, in old versions of JavaScript, like prior to ES 2015 or ES6, you used to have to add strings together. You have to do like this string plus this variable value. But ES6 allows us to do string interpolation like this. So you use these backticks, and then you use $sign with the brackets, and you can calculate a variable value in here. In this case, we're going to read the IPFS hash that was stored whenever we submitted this, and whenever we update the state, this component state in React is going to re-render this component. This render function can get called again, and we'll actually see this image displayed on the page. I'm going to save that and go back to the browser. Just refresh, just be double sure. Choose a file. I'm going to choose the DApp University logo and open it and click submit. Boom! Check that out. We have a file that is saved to IPFS. Check that out. Awesome. So it is working, my friends. Very cool. So yeah, that gets us up to the point of storing the file on IPFS with React, with JavaScript in a decentralized way. So the next step is going to be to actually store this value on the blockchain. So if you'll notice, if I refresh the page, this is going to disappear. Right now, we're only, persisting the IPFS value with the client-side state. React is keeping track of where this file is located. But if I refresh, womp womp, the image goes away. So that's what we want to use the blockchain for. The blockchain is basically going to be our backend database, in a sense. It's going to be storage where we can, persist the value of that IPFS hash, that hash that we saw in the console. And that's going to allow us, to maintain a consistent state across this application. And that's precisely what we're going to do in the next video. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and see that next video in the playlist where, we use this simple storage smart contract where we'll actually store the IPFS value, IPFS hash value to the blockchain. And check out that next video in the playlist when it comes out. Subscribe, all that good stuff. Leave a comment down in the comment section below to let me know what you thought about this video. If you're enjoying seeing React.js tutorials, or if this is, if you don't like React.js and you don't like ES6, just let me know. All right. Until next time, thanks for watching DApp University.